All right, so welcome back. If you read the thumbnail, you would know that the title of today's video is basically being able to get four Fuji cameras for the price of one. The one Fuji camera that I'm actually referring to is the brand newly released XE5. It has a with kit lens, which is the 23 millimeter 2.8 weather sealed Fuji pancake lens. It's about $18.99. It just so happens that when I acquired my fourth Fuji camera, which I'll talk about these, and by the way, you notice I only have three, and it's mainly because I'm filming with the M5. So you will see some footage of that when I talk about it. But needless to say, I just so happened to go back and add up how much I spent on the bodies, not the lenses. And for four bodies, I was actually able to get them for approximately, I think it was like 1,893, and that was without tax. So I was thinking like, man, that's really close to that XE5, with a lens. And would it be worth it to actually give up four just to get the one? Now, here's the thing. I don't plan on buying the XE5, at least no time soon until it's actually on the used markets, because that's how I roll. But what I will say is, if I was in the market for that camera and this option came along, it would be very difficult for me to actually go with that camera. And I can talk to you about some of the reasons why. I think the easier way for me to do this is really to do it with the individual cameras and what I think their advantages are versus that particular camera. Number one, I'm going to tell you some of the things that I'm not really a huge fan of the XE5. And honestly, the one thing that I do like about that camera is I actually like the flip up screen. And it was funny because when I was actually buying one of these cameras, an XE4 came up, and I almost bought the XE4, but there were some things about the body and the handling that I didn't really care for, so I didn't get it. But needless to say, the flip up screen is the one thing that I don't really have on any of these cameras. However, I do have a workaround for that because I have a U-Rig screen, selfie screen that I actually used to put on my XT3. But now I have the XM5, which actually has a flip out screen. Once again, I love the flip up screens. I prefer that to the fully articulating screen. But, once again, I have workarounds. So that would be the number one advantage. Other than that, like some of the other features that it actually has, not necessarily my cup of tea for the type of stuff that I do. Once again, the prices ever come down on it, and I find it in good condition, used price or used, I might at some point, but no time soon, and I definitely don't plan on picking up the new one. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start talking about some of the advantages that having these four systems or four cameras actually has versus that one. And I'm going to start with this camera because this right here is kind of like my workhorse. This is the XT3, and if you are familiar with my channel, you know this is the first Fuji that I own. This actually replaced my A7 III and my RX100 Mark 7. I've used it for video, but really this season I've used it more for sports than anything. And I actually have the Samyang or Rokinon 75 millimeter 1.8 lens on here, which is actually what I've been using. And those sports are like fast moving, so like wrestling, judo, and lacrosse. And this thing is performed admirably. The body, first off, to me, I love having the DSLR or SLR style with the viewfinder in the middle. The handling is very comfortable. It's big enough. I feel like I can hold it all day, and I don't need to add a grip to this. Nothing, and it's comfortable. And then it's fast. I get 2 card slots, and and it's weather sealed. So honestly, those options alone put this above the XE5 for most of my shooting when it comes down to like the sports and the outdoor type stuff where I just need something that's trusty, reliable, and quick. And it just works. I haven't had any issues with this darn thing. And if you want to go back and look at some of my old content, you can see I actually got this thing for like less than $500. So it was a great deal. Moving right along, I'm actually going to briefly talk about the camera that I'm filming on, and then I'm going to jump to these because technically the XM5 wasn't my second Fuji camera. My second Fuji camera was the XT30, and then I got the XT30 Mark II. The XT30, the first one I got was actually used off of one of the camera reseller sites, and it had some issues. So I actually had to send that back. It was actually in really good condition, but when I sent it back, I went ahead and sprung for the XT30 Mark II, which at the time, MSRP, it wasn't overpriced like all of the other Fuji cameras. So I was able to pick that one up. I believe it was like $799. Needless to say, I took it overseas with me. That camera, and it's really, really weird because you're probably going to wonder when I get to this next camera why it was a thing on that camera or not on this one. I really couldn't like take to that camera. The handling, I don't know. I thought it was the handling at first, but I actually don't think that it was the handling. I think the fact that it was so small and there's so much stuff crammed into it, I just wasn't a huge fan. One of the things I liked about the XT3 is there's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of steals, a lot of, I should say, steal capability, a lot of video features. And I frankly like the menu in here because it's a little bit less than the XT30 Mark II, not by much, but to me to have all of that stuff on that smaller screen, smaller body, it was just kind of like cramped. I don't know. I just didn't feel great using it out and about shooting with it. So replaced that camera, and eventually I came across a couple of different cameras. So I got the XM5. XM5, probably out of all of these, outside of those XT30s, not necessarily my favorite camera. And the main reason for the XT5 not being my favorite camera is the lack of an EVF. I thought that it was going to be less of a thing for me because I've had cameras without EVFs. The Canon M6, granted, I bought an attachment for it, but I could use that one fine. And the Sony A5100. But here's the deal. They actually had flip out screens. So if I'm holding it down to my waist, I can flip it out and look at it. For me, relying on this screen, and when I do flip it out, it's out to the side. I just wasn't a huge fan of that. I actually ordered an optical viewfinder for it. It was a terrible one, by the way. I'm not even going to put a link up for that because I wouldn't even recommend anybody buy it. And then I also ordered, Small Rig has a EVF that's actually coming out actually this month. And I just canceled that order, but it was I think it's a 28 millimeter optical viewfinder. Great deal on it. It's like 40 something bucks or something like that. But if you're looking for something like that, then definitely I would probably recommend you get it from Small Rig because it should be solid. Speaking of Small Rig, I put all the Small Rig accessories on this camera just to try to make it work. And to be quite honest with you, for stills, it doesn't really work for me. Video, I'm kind of on the fence. One of the things I've been experiencing with this camera for video is overheating. And it really shocks me because, first off, I live here in Colorado, and where I've been shooting has been, been indoors. Like, as a matter of fact, I think the closest I've gotten to being outdoors when I started experiencing the overheating issue was in my garage. But it wasn't like a hot day, and it was actually really nice. So that's why I was out there filming some bike stuff, and I got the little blinking icon, and it happened 2 times in a row, and I was like, well, okay, this is just one more thing. But the way that I look at it is if I can't really use it for stills because I don't really enjoy it, and then I figured, well, I'll use it for video, but then I started having that issue. So I think at this point, I'm going to probably just sell this and just go back to having 3 bodies. And maybe at some point, you know, if something comes along that I think I could actually use for video, like maybe the XE4, which once again, I've looked at XE4, not a huge fan of the handling. I guess I could add a grip to it, but no rush. I still got the XT3. It works fine for video. So the next camera I'm going to talk about is the XT10. So this is one of the ones that I picked up. Like most of these other cameras you see here, this camera was like in well-used condition. So when I bought it, I had to reattach some grips. Some of the actual plastic or rubber was peeling off. So I had to do some epoxy stuff there. I actually put just a half case on it. Frankly, the half case was just for the cosmetics because I think what they replaced this with was kind of like a cheaper grip, and it just doesn't really look right. But other than that, this camera's been solid. And frankly, it's kind of funny because I thought I got it for a really cheap price. It was like a little over 200 something bucks, and I thought I wasn't going to like it as much. But I actually found, because the menu is very, very simple. Keep in mind, this has got an X-Trans 2 sensor. So the menu system is, you know, from around that time frame. So there's a lot less stuff. So it's very simplistic. And I didn't realize how big of a deal that was. And it was funny because I started thinking about, well, why didn't I like the XT30? I think the XT30 for the size of the camera had too much. Now, what I gotta probably explain is I don't need all those features for what I use the smaller bodies for. Unlike my XT3, when I take this camera out, I actually go bike packing or I'll go downtown and shoot, just out in the woods or whatever it is, But I just want something small and light I can just take out of my bag and shoot. Actually, I got a gravel bike. I got a bag for it. So just being able to pull the thing out, do what I need to do, take some shots, put it back in, and ride. The XT30, I just couldn't get with it like that. This right here, being small, light, simple, makes a lot of sense, which is actually going to move me right along to my most recent purchase, which was the XE3. So the XE3, the reason why this camera makes sense for at least my lineup is because it actually has a different sensor. So if you're familiar with the X-Trans sensors, they all kind of have their own unique sort of look, color science, or whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of started liking Fuji. I really like the X-T3, but then, once I started looking at other cameras, I'm like, well, I really don't want to have the same sensor, which is another reason why I didn't really want to get the XE4, because that sensor is very similar to this sensor as well as like the the XE4, but also the XT4 has the same sensor. So this one is the X-Trans 3. So it's weird because I haven't had this for very long, but I've been taking some pictures with it, and I'm looking at the colors, and man, they look completely different. It's funny because I shoot a lot of Fujifilm bracketing, and if you're not familiar with that, it's where your camera will allow you to set 3 film sims. So when you take a shot, it takes 3 pictures, and it applies those colors. So I'll have like a Provia, and I'll have like Arcos, and then I'll have Velvia. So I'll get 3 different pictures and I'll be able to compare them. So it's funny because I've done that with all of these. And when I look at the colors on this camera, it does not look the same at all. Like it's really crazy that it's like that, but I understand why. But needless to say, this body, if you notice, it's slightly smaller than my XT10, but the main reason is because they offset the viewfinder because it is a rangefinder style. Now, me personally, I didn't know if I was going to like this camera or dislike this camera. Let me get out of the frame so it can stop focusing on me. And the reason why I say that is because I like having my viewfinder in the middle. So whenever I got this camera in and I started using it, it actually started to make sense. And then I had to think about it because my daughter shoots with an A6000. And same thing, it's offset. So it's like I've already kind of used that type of camera before, as well as I got a bunch of friends that use Sonys, and when we swap cameras, I use their stuff. So it's like it wasn't that big of a deal, but what I can tell you, I love having EVF again versus having the no EVF in the XM5. Now, the downside of this camera is, there's no flip out, flip up, articulate, no screen. The screen does nothing, it's fixed. That's not that bad. So once again, that was another concern. And when I started using it, because of the way that it's actually positioned where everything's over to the left-hand side, at least for the EVF, and then all your buttons are over on the right-hand side, the screen's not really that big of a deal for me because I'm holding the camera like this, I'm shooting, and I can still see the screen. And when I look down, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Same thing right here. So I've taken this camera out now, and I've shot a few times, and frankly, I mean, it's done well. So I think I'll wrap this thing up. What I'll say is, if I could do it all over again, whether it's buying the new XE5 with its nice flip-up screen and all the other stuff that I really don't need, I probably would make the same choice. Stick with, getting the older Fujis versus buying that new Fuji that it's not weather sealed. It's very expensive. Now, granted, the price I used was with that one lens, so I guess you do have that advantage. But I'd rather have redundancy over everything else. So in the event that something happens with one of my bodies, I got a backup. So that was the other thing too. I can't just have one camera. I have tried that, and I liked it for some reasons because it simplified things. If you watch my channel, you can actually watch videos about the one camera, one lens experiment I did for like a year. But me personally, I'd rather have, like I said, more than one body. So then if something goes wrong, I could just swap. I already have always have two cameras with me. So if you got any questions, feel free, leave them down below. Click like, subscribe. And oh, the other thing I will say is at some point I'm probably going to do a video on how you can buy these cheap Fuji cameras. So, and this is going to apply to every system. I've got what I consider to be a hack, but maybe you guys are already using it and hopefully it's working for you. But I discovered when I started doing things this way, these cameras, honestly, it became pretty easy to buy them.